Welcome back to the channel. This is Wes. Yesterday, I took a look at some of the issues with DC Comics when it comes to like the bottom of the barrel sellers that they have. Things are really kind of bottoming out. Today, I'm going to look at all the comic book sales for July of 2022. These sales charts are based off the information provided by ICV2.com, which is based on the Comic Hub app, which is only like 100 and something stores, so it is a small sample size. But these are the numbers that we have. If you can find better numbers, send them my way, and I'll cover them there. But this is the information that we have regarding what is and what is not performing in the comic book industry. We're going to look at the top 50 sales. Then we're going to look at #1 comics debut issues. Then we'll hit up all the Marvel franchise and the DC franchise and finish this bad boy up. So let's look at the top 50 sales first up. In the top 10, Marvel Comics completely dominated DC Comics once again. Marvel has 8 comic books in the top 10, better than the 6 titles they put in the top 10 last month. It's a wide variety of titles and teams and franchises that make up the titles within this top 10, so job well done. DC Comics coming in at a distant second with only 2 titles in the top 10, down from 4 last month. Of course, #1 is Batman, perennial bestseller. We got a new creative team on there, which is good news because Chip Zdarsky isn't the biggest name, but it does appear people came in for the ride, and I think they're going to be happy because Batman's been pretty darn good. As far as the top 25, Marvel Comics, of course, dominated. 15 of the top 25 selling comic books in July of 2022 were from Marvel Comics, the exact same number as last month. We've got Spider-Man, X-Men, Daredevil, Star Wars, Moon Knight, Ghost Rider, Captain America, all of those franchises appearing in the top 25. Like I said, for Marvel Comics, a very nice, diverse array of titles with lots of different heroes. DC Comics, of course, came in second with 8 titles in the top 25, down from 9 of last month. 6 of DC Comics' 8 entries into the top 25 are not shockingly from the Batman franchise. As far as the top 50, Marvel Comics took first place with a very healthy 29 titles, or 58% market share of the top 50. DC came in second with 14 titles, or 28% of the top 50. 9 of DC's 14 titles are from the Batman franchise, and 5 of those 9 are starring Bruce Wayne himself, the actual Batman. Image Comics came in a very distant third with 4 titles in the top 50, while Boom Studios came in fourth with 3 titles in the top 50. And that does give you a nice, healthy look why Marvel Comics appear to be dominating so well, because they do have a lot of things that are hitting right now. It's not just Spider-Man. It's not just X-Men. It's not just the Avengers. It's a lot of things that are working right now. They've got some B and C-list heroes like your Moon Knight and your Venoms all kind of performing really well in conjunction with your Spider-Man and your X-Men and all the big titles like that. Whereas over at DC Comics, it's not really a healthy state right now. It's pretty much Batman-related titles that are selling. And then there's a sprinkling of things here or there. Now let's look at some of these debut titles. New series of one-shots that debuted in July of 2022. Marvel Comics should be very happy about Daredevil #1, Chip Zdarsky, Marco Checchetto, hitting in at the #3 spot. These two have been on Daredevil for like 2.5 years now. This is a reset coming out of Devil's Reign. I think this is a good sign that perhaps Devil's Reign did up the profile of Chip Zdarsky and Marco Cecchetto's Daredevil. We will see if this has some staying power because it was criminally under-ordered previously, despite having extremely high quality. Axe Judgment Day #1 for Marvel Comics has to be a little bit of an eye-opener coming in at #6. You would expect that to be in the top 5. So I was a little bit surprised by that. But really, there are a ton of miniseries that debuted in July of 22 that are just shocking how badly they're doing. Defenders Beyond has Al Ewing. That thing absolutely bombed at #84. Superman Space Age, $10 comic book from Mark Russell. I'm not surprised by this, coming in at #96. A debut Superman series, almost debuting outside the top 100, is absolutely eye-opening for DC Comics. The Janice Vell Captain Marvel series from Peter David debuting outside the top 100 has to be disappointing. A lot of those Peter David throwback series have actually done pretty well, considering they play no part in modern continuity, but this one appears to not be a hit. Not surprised to see Artemis Unwanted #1, Vita Ayala debuting at #160, a one-shot no one asked for, wrapping up an event that really no one read. But the real kick in the nuts for DC Comics has to be DC Mech #1, debuting at 190. Image, Boom, Dynamite, IDW, Ablaze, and AWA Studios all had debut #1 comic books perform better than DC Mech. That one's double DOA. I said in my comic book solicitations, I don't know why this comic book is here, and it looks like comic book retailers agreed with me. Not a lot of high-profile comic book series debuting in July of 2022. Obviously, we did have Daredevil and Axe Judgment Day, which both made the top 10. It looks like the interest in limited series is definitely waning. I think people are looking for quality that they know is going to be there, and maybe they're just not getting it in miniseries right now, but you can see a lot of them are debuting well outside like the top 50, which you don't expect from a #1 issue from Marvel or DC. DC Mac, I mean, my goodness. Even though I thought the title was completely unnecessary, I never would have predicted a debut quite that badly. Now let's have a look at the big events going on at DC and Marvel Comics. Surprisingly, neither A.X.E, Judgment Day, or Dark Crisis were able to crack the top 5. This has to be a bit concerning for both publishers. You would expect a big DC Crisis event to definitely take the top spot, and you would expect an Avengers X-Men crossover event to jump up into the top 3 as well. It does appear fans have event fatigue. I think retailers have event fatigue. I think they're tired of buying in sight unseen on a lot of these event books that really aren't led up to very well, and people coming in and kind of skipping them and sticking with what they know. But I think the real big story coming out of this is the failure of Dark Crisis at selling tie-ins. Dark Crisis Worlds Without a Justice League Superman #1, debuting at number 41 with Tom King is pretty surprising. The Dark Crisis tie-in to The Flash from Jeremy Adams, not really busting into the top 50. Flash traditionally is a top 25 kind of selling comic book, but has been much maligned since the Heroes in Crisis series. And then, of course, Dark Crisis Young Justice coming in at number 72. That's too high considering the quality of the book. But it is an indication that there just isn't a whole lot of faith and interest in Dark Crisis. Besides debuting outside of the top 5, all the tie-ins, none of them cracking the top 40, is a bit surprising. You would expect some better traction for those titles and maybe some elevation for Flash as far as sales. And that series has been really good. Unfortunately, nobody's been reading it, but the events, I wouldn't say they're a dud, but they're certainly not the big hits Marvel and DC were looking for. Now let's go check out the Marvel franchises, starting out with Spider-Man. Venom #9 failed to make the top 10 for the first time since Venom got rebooted, falling down to the number 47 spot. This might be a bit of an aberration. We have seen this in the past. This came out the last week of July. Sometimes we will see Major League bounce backs. The following month, we did see something similar that I'll talk about when it comes to Immortal X-Men. So I'm not certain that this thing is dead, but it had been a perennial top 10 seller. Spider-Punk continues free-falling, debuted inside the top 10. Now it's outside of the top 50 within 3 issues. That's a bit concerning for Marvel Comics, but that series is absolutely awful. You don't want to read that. And I think retailers kind of caught on to the fact that Spider-Punk was just really, really bad. Miles Morales' Spider-Man had that really big jump last month with issue number 38 into the top 10, which felt like it was quite out of place. Didn't really line up with what we had seen previously for that title. And this month, yes, it dropped right back down to where it was supposed to be, right at number 67. Spider-Man, very healthy. You can see Spider-Man 900, a $10 comic book, sold very well. Marvel likely made a lot of money. The issue before that also cracking the top 5. So nothing to worry about as far as the Spider-Man titles, especially the flagship titles. People are really in love with that. We'll see what happens with this Dan Slott adjective of the Spider-Man series. Now let's go look at the X-Men. X-Men's Hellfire Gala #1 managed to squeak into the top 10. Unfortunately, this means we're likely to get more Hellfire Gala in the future. This is absolutely propped up by variant cover schemes where they throw in the characters on the cover with the stupid Hellfire Gala dress that they're wearing, stuff like that. The highest selling monthly title from X-Men is Immortal X-Men, which landed at number 11. A very big jump from last month's issue, which came in at number 28, which had to be concerning. So, like I said, you do see weird variations from month to month with some of these titles, especially the ones that come out at the end of the month. Of course, Tini Howard's Knights of X still isn't selling. Issue number 4 is all the way down to number 79. No surprise, that comic book absolutely sucks, but Tini Howard still thinks she's got it, and she's doing it, folks. Now let's go over to the Avengers. 0 titles in the top 10, just 1 in the top 25, and only 3 in the top 50. That is quite unimpressive for one of the major franchises at Marvel Comics. It's just not in a great place right now. What's really strange are the Captain America sales. Captain America Sentinel of Liberty, number 2, stays in the top 25 with the number 25 slot. But on the other hand, we've got fake Captain America, Falcon Cap, Sam Wilson as Captain America Symbol of Truth number 3, the worst selling Avengers franchise title on the 3rd issue, down at the number 104 spot. People hate mantle swaps. It doesn't matter. It's not about Sam Wilson. It's about the fact that he's Captain America here, and you still have Steve Rogers in the other series. I could have told you, everyone could have told you this thing was absolutely going to bomb. I didn't think it would be this fast, but I'm not surprised. Tochi Onyebuchi is also not a comic book writer, so Marvel pretty much gets what they paid for, a dead Captain America series on the 3rd issue. Avengers 58 came in at number 34, which is actually a really big improvement as of late. Avengers had almost dropped out of the top 100 prior to this, so that was actually an enormous jump. And I'm really sad to see that Ant-Man number 1 just had a terrible debut, debuting outside the top 50 at number 53. That was actually a really good issue from Al Ewing, but that also kind of reinforces that Al Ewing is not a superstar. Yes, he had superstar numbers on Immortal Hulk, but he has not been able to replicate that at all, other than Venom, where he has a co-writer. Now let's go look at the Star Wars franchise. 1 title in the top 5, 2 in the top 25, 4 in the top 50. Star Wars is absolutely outperforming the amount of content that Marvel Comics are putting out with their places in the top 5, 25, and top 50. Although it does appear The Mandalorian is the only thing that Disney has created new for Star Wars that is really just a hit, generally speaking. The first issue debuted at number 2, right behind Batman with a new writer. That is absolutely spectacular, outperforming Dark Crisis and Axe Judgment Day. But for a franchise that Marvel only puts out maybe 6 or 7 of these titles a month, it's absolutely performing well. Although if you go look at Star Wars Halcyon Legacy, which is a tie-in, I believe, to a ride at Disney World, not surprising that there isn't a ton of interest in that. There just aren't really any sales associated with it. What is more surprising is Star Wars Dr. Aphra, the big breakout character from Disney Star Wars, is well outside the top 100 at number 119. When you look at it against its peers in the Star Wars franchise, it is absolutely underperforming at staggering levels compared to the other stuff within Star Wars, other than a comic book that's tied into like a theme park ride. I don't know why Alyssa Wong keeps getting work, but I guess CB Cebulski sees some talent there that nobody else sees, especially comic book customers. But you can see why Marvel Comics are doing so good. That once again reiterates there are issues across the board, and Avengers should be doing much better. I mean, Avengers is in bad shape, but X-Men has a couple titles that are performing pretty well, and certainly has some that aren't performing nearly as well. Spider-Man is more than carrying its own weight. Star Wars is definitely outperforming the amount of emphasis that Marvel is putting on it as a comic book series, and carrying its weight as well. So that's why you can see Marvel Comics is doing much better and much healthier place than DC Comics at the moment. Now let's look at DC Comics and the overwhelming amount of Batman titles. Batman 125 with a new writer takes the number 1 spot over 2 events, one from DC and one from Marvel. Flashpoint Beyond remains in the top 15 with the number 14 spot. This is really smart marketing by DC Comics. The number 0 issue wasn't ordered very well, and they basically gave it away. They overshipped it, and they threw some extra covers on it and whatnot. Obviously, retailers took a gander and realized there was a lot of quality there, and they started ordering heavy, so that's one of the successes from DC Comics. DC has to be very happy with the performance of Detective Comics number 1062. We've got Ram V debuting on the series. It was dropping down to like in the 90s. It felt like it was about to drop out of the top 100. Boom, got an enormous spike. Once again, I think this was also good. I think there was a lot of good quality associated with that. Hopefully they're able to continue selling that. The artwork was absolutely spectacular. Nice to see Batman Superman World's Finest finding its place kind of in the top 25 or right on the verge of it. Nightwing also staying in the top 50, not surprised there. I Am Batman, Batman Urban Legends, Harley Quinn, Batman the Fortress. My goodness, what are they doing sitting outside the top 125, especially Batman the Fortress? That is a Batman comic book starring Bruce Wayne, and you've got Lex Luthor in this issue. It's clear on the cover, and nobody wants to read it. Apparently, when you put card-carrying soy boys like Gary Whitta on a Batman character, people just run away in droves. Once again, I Am Not Batman, Jace Fox. Nobody likes these mantle swaps. Nobody wants fake Batman. I'm shocked DC are even considering putting out any more of these Batman Urban Legend titles. It's like an $8 comic book that no one reads whatsoever, but nothing is quite as bad as Future State Gotham number 15. Future State has absolutely played out. No one cares about Future State, and the worst thing is it ushered in all these new creators that are absolutely bombing left and right. I don't know what the point of that series ever was. Sounds like it's about to end, but DC Comics are absolutely propped up on sales from Batman. It's the only thing that is selling. And Batman-related characters, obviously, we got Poison Ivy, we've got the Joker, Nightwing, all within the top 25, top 50 sellers at this point. But DC Comics are Batman comics. If you don't believe me, look at the other stuff. Let's go look at the Justice League and the other 2/3 of the Trinity. Look at that Justice League franchise. Black Adam number 2 has to be a little bit surprising, almost falling out of the top 50 on the second issue. Debuted, I think, at number 11. That is an enormous drop. Multiversity Teen Justice number 2 dropped all the way to number 173 on the second issue. freaking believable that that could even happen. Aquaman and Flash Void Song #2 doesn't make the top 200. Aquaman #6 doesn't make the 200. If you needed another reminder that Brian Michael Bendis at DC Comics is a huge mistake, Justice League versus Legion of Superheroes #4, number 117. Naomi, season 2, number 5, unranked. Absolutely shocking how bad DC sales can get when you get away from the Batman franchise itself. But it ain't much better when you look at Superman. Thankfully, there is Batman Superman World's Finest, and the Dark Crisis Superman tie-in at least was in the top 50. I guess that's sort of a win, but Superman Son of Kal-El finished well outside the top 50. Again, that is the flagship Superman title at DC Comics. It's absolutely failing. Superman Space Age #1, a $10 comic book, debuts at number 96. Mark Russell is not a superstar. I do not know why they keep putting on characters like this. But when you look at Wonder Woman, that's really where the sad factor comes in. I guess the less said about Wonder Woman, the better at this point. 4 new comics, and the top seller is Wonder Woman 789 at number 130. Artemis Unwanted debuts at 160. Becky Cloonan, Michael Conrad, Jordi Belair, Vita Ayala, Stephanie Williams, and Stephanie Phillips. I wonder why none of these comic books are selling. Maybe, just maybe, if you put a halfway decent, competent comic book writer on some of these DC franchises, they could actually sell. But at this point, no one is reading Wonder Woman because you've only put the worst comic book writers, period, on the title. DC, once again, is so uneven at this point. It's so heavily weighted towards Batman, and everything else is like just also rans. No one cares about any of the characters outside of Batman and Batman-related characters. Unless you put Superman with Batman, no one cares. And that is just, it's bad news. DC needs to do something to turn this around. They've known this for months, folks, and they've done absolutely nothing. But DC Comics and even Marvel in general aren't very reactive when they get bad news. Graphic novel sales is where all the growth in comic books has been experienced over the last 3 or 4 years. It's absolutely enormous. Guess who's not growing? DC and Marvel. There was a really good report from Brian Hibbs and his Tilting at Windmills newsletter on the Comics Beat, breaking down all the sales. And once you see this, you are going to puke in your mouth. It's that bad. If you haven't checked this out, definitely check this out.